As well as the covert cloak as well, where you don't see it on other Volcaronas, this one having it so that you wouldn't be hit by the fake out if you're trying to go for a quiver dance or something there. But let's get into our game one of the top 16, Carson Confer and Cary Diortona. Carson, the #1 seed in the tournament right now here in Louisville with his Psychic Core, his 2-2-2 version in DD Mail and Sneasler, activating that Psychic Seed, boosting his special defense, which could come in handy against a special attacking Dragapult on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. Though unlike the ND female, the ND male is faster than the Rillaboom here, which means that we end with Grassy Terrain out on the first turn. The Unburden means that Sneasler, one of the few things that's faster than Dragapult going into turn 1, and it isn't the Sneasler with coaching. It does have the Throat Chop to immediately threaten the Dire Claw here on turn 1. It's also Terra Dark Sneasler, so if you really wanted to go out and get that attack, you could amplify the damage. Of course, with the Grassy Terrain, not the Psychic Terrain, you have to watch out for a fake out from Rillaboom into that Sneasler.
And DD Mail will swap out for Carson because you really always want to win this terrain war. So bring it back out in a few turns. Sneasler will protect to avoid the potential fake out on the other end. Rillaboom does go for the fake out into Sneasler to protect, so no damage there. And what does Dragapult go for? It will be the U-turn into the Annihilate that swapped in. Doesn't do a lot of damage even with the critical hit.
Yeah. Cary, as he's making this U-turn decision, already has a really critical piece of information, which is that we've now seen 3 Pokemon, and none of them were Dozo or Tatsugiri. So it's going to be at least no Commander Dozo, and Cary already knows that as he decides to bring in the Tauros here, but give the attack drop over to the Annihilate, which does have Defiant, and get an attack boost back out of it. But Sneasler has been weakened in the meantime.
And that U-turn already did have, one hit into Annihilate to give at least a little bit more base power to the to its potential hit, if that, or I should say that it actually doesn't even have it.
Yeah, no Rage Fist
This
here.
is the Choice Scarf version that we were talking about in the lounge. That it's not the traditional version. You want Choice Scarf, move fast, final Gambit, or just quick coaching onto the other end. It's going to be it's really tough for Cary to deal with.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting turn because the Annihilate might really like to just final Gambit its way off the field here, but now it's gotten an attack boost. You have to worry that you might take a Grassy Glide that could do enough damage to not allow you to actually get a KO with final Gambit, so risky to click that button mainly. Maybe. Meanwhile, Sneasler has taken -1 attack. It's not going to do as much damage to this Rillaboom if it goes after with Dire Claw.
Tauros does protect. This is Dire Claw into the Rillaboom. Super effective, but only doing half HP. It does roll the poison, the most likely option from the Dire Claw. Final Gambit from Annihilate goes into Paldean Tauros' Protect, though. So Cary's going to keep that health safe from the Protect. Woodhammer in Grassy Terrain brings Annihilate down very low, and Carson's going to have to rethink this strategy right now.
Yeah, this is tricky because now you are still locked into Final Gambit, but with such low health, it's not going to actually do that much. You could use it to just pick up the KO onto Rillaboom. Rillaboom is that low, or you could try to pivot Annihilate back out and try to make use of close combat later on in the game, or maybe coaching into Dragonite that we see as the 4th Pokemon. But again, a pivotal moment. Where else Sneasler looks pretty reasonable here. Can get a KO onto Rillaboom, or could go after the Paldean Tauros. Maybe risk that Wave Crash is just a 1-hit KO against the Sneasler. This isn't a Focus Sash one, and the Psychic Seed's not going to help you with that Wave Crash at all. But if Sneasler can get a couple of attacks off, it's going to end up providing really good value for Carson in this match.
Rillaboom's HP is so low right now. You have the poison ticking down. It took even more recoil because of the Woodhammer on that last turn, so Rillaboom is not going to be able to stick around for too many more turns here in game 1 for Cary. Dragonite swaps into the Annihilate position. Carson wants to keep that Choice Scarf safe for later, trying to lock into another attack later on here. And Rillaboom switching into the Electabuzz on that turn. You knew you wouldn't be really too concerned with the final Gambit since the HP was so low, so Electabuzz gets in for free, and Tauros goes to sleep from the Dire Claw. Tauros no longer able to potentially Wave Crash into the Sneasler.
Dire Claw is so far going very well for Carson. Now seen all 4 of Cary's Pokemon. The Electabuzz, the final one to hit the field, is going to provide pretty good redirection support against the Dragonite, but it's hard to redirect support a sleeping Pokemon. Still going to be happening though, as Tauros has already taken 1 turn to sleep, could wake up on this turn, but for now, attacks only going into the Electabuzz.
Sneasler with the close combat, but remember, it's a very bulky Pokemon on the other end for Electabuzz thanks to the Eviolite item, so that close combat really does not do too much damage into the Electabuzz. Tauros does stay asleep for a 2nd turn, and the Stomping Tantrum from Dragonite brings Electabuzz down low.
Yeah, so Electabuzz has paid a pretty high cost to keep Tauros healthy, but now Tauros has taken 2 sleep turns. There's a 50% chance to wake up on this turn. Meanwhile, Sneasler has lowered his defense, so definitely vulnerable to the wave crash at this point.
Now we will have a Terrestrialization, our first one of the game in this series, and it is the Electabuzz going into the Ghost typing here. So changing up that, going from Mono Electric to Mono Ghost. Now Follow Me, wanting to redirect the potential attack away from this Dragonite. The close combat would also fail now that you are a Ghost type. That's exactly what Sneasler goes for. No damage from Carson here on this turn, but Tauros is still asleep. Now the Stomping Tantrum into a Ghost type Electabuzz with the critical hit. It's not enough for the KO. The HP recovered from the Grassy Terrain the prior turn is what keeps Electabuzz on the field.
Electabuzz still here, but definitely vulnerable to a Dire Claw at this point, or at least to a Throat Chop here. That Terrestrialization used a turn earlier to dodge a close combat and weaken the first Stomping Tantrum as well. Might have allowed Electabuzz to still redirect away a couple of attacks this turn, but instead it's so low that it will go down. Tauros now going to be guaranteed to wake up, but this is tricky because if you just use Tauros to wave crash into Sneasler, you'll take a bunch of recoil back. Dragonite might be able to just finish off Tauros, and that would be 2 Pokemon down for Cary with a very low Rillaboom in the back.
And the Electabuzz is also, you know, low. You say Rillaboom's low HP, Electabuzz low HP, probably has just one last Follow Me left in it at this point to try to redirect one of these crucial attacks away from Carson's 2 Pokemon. It's time for Dragonite to Terrestrialize, break the balloons out as a Terra Fairy type.
Yeah, this Terra Flying Dragonite is going to be so important for closing out this game. Is going to be able to deal damage to all the Pokemon that are left other than the Dragapult really easily.
Throat Chop, though, goes into Electabuzz's Protect, so Electabuzz actually does get to stick around more than this turn. Finally, Tauros joins the party after taking all 3 turns of sleep, and that's the Wave Crash into the Sneasler for the one-hit KO. That will be a lot of recoil damage onto this Tauros because taking out all of Sneasler's HP. And now Terra Blast from the Dragonite into the flying weak Pokemon. Tauros is down.
Yeah, I'm not sure the amount of recoil mattered there. Tauros taking a massive attack as Sneasler and Tauros get traded for each other, and the game starts to simplify a little bit. Having Electabuzz survive through that turn may end up being pretty important. The Ghost type Electabuzz not vulnerable to Annihilate, really. The 3 fighting attacks and U-turn is going to have difficulty KOing it, so it's going to force NDD, it looks like, out here in order to deal with the Electabuzz sooner. But if the Rillaboom comes out, you'll never end up with that Psychic Terrain.
Dragapult is the choice here for Cary, so Rillaboom is still in the back. He has at least one more way of getting rid of the Psychic Terrain if you want to swap it in, but since it's such low HP, at such a precarious position for this Rillaboom.
Right, Rillaboom coming in here would go down to any sort of attack. He's probably just vulnerable to extreme speed later on as well. It's going to have a hard time providing much value here. Electabuzz gets one more Follow Me, so it's really down to Dragapult to deal all of the remaining damage here to a full health NDD and full health Dragonite. That means that it has to be preserved very carefully. Taking a Terra Blast and an Expanding Force would just KO Dragapult. And Dragapult, it's the Specs one. It can't so easily just start clicking Outrage and want it KOing things. If you go into Draco Meteor, you're going to start dropping your own special attack with very few pivots left in the game. And if you lock into Shadow Ball, you can never hurt this NDD. So a pretty tricky situation and a really important decision for Cary on this turn. It is the helping hand from Electabuzz. No pivoting, just going to be extra damage on this attack.
That's right. No Follow Me, just wants to boost up the damage Dragapult can do on this turn for Cary. Dragonite protects itself, so if this Draco Meteor goes into that slot, that means Cary's entire turn was wasted into the very smart Protect from Dragapult. So he keeps his Dragonite safe, and now Indeedee Mail can click the Trick Room, twist those dimensions, punishing Dragapult for being so fast.
Yeah, Dragapult will now be the last thing to move on the field. An Expanding Force would have been really impactful there, but a Trick Room maybe even more so, as it means that both of these attacks are going to come out before the Dragapult moves and threaten just so much damage into it.
Yeah, because as a Dragon Ghost typing, you're not able to resist the Expanding Force at all. Terra Blast, the flying typing from Dragonite, also does neutral damage into the Dragapult.
We haven't seen the speed interaction between the Dragonite and the NDD yet. It could be pretty important. The Terra Blast can only be redirected away with Follow Me if the Dragonite were to move first.
All right, so we'll see what happens here as Rillaboom swaps onto the field for the Dragonite. Will get rid of the Psychic Terrain, which gets rid of the spread aspect of the Expanding Force, meaning you can only target into one slot. Electabuzz goes for a Protect here on this turn, but Dragonite does not care. It will just Terra Blast instead, knocking out the Rillaboom.
Yep, so Rillaboom, with so little health left to spend, all it has left to do is change the terrain one more time. Comes in and gets sacrificed, gives a little bit of health back over to Electabuzz, but also means that Expanding Force not just is only single target, but is also much weaker, so much less of a threat to deal with Dragapult quickly, but still, Dragonite completely healthy on the other side. You know, maybe the choice specs helping Draco Meteor is enough to KO, but if it was, there'd be too many Pokemon left to fight, so Cary sees the writing on the wall and concedes game 1.
Yeah, we did learn, though, from the question, asked of who was going to underspeed in Trick Room, that Dragonite did move before Indeedee Mail on Carson's team, so he will win game 1 there, 1 game away from moving on to the top 8 here in Louisville. Cary is going to have to make some adjustments. I did really appreciate that Terra Ghost on Electabuzz. I thought it was a very valuable play. However, as you mentioned, you might have been able to use it like maybe a turn earlier so you didn't take that close combat damage.
Yeah, the end of that game might have looked different with a more healthy Electabuzz, but Carson had established a pretty large lead, and especially because it is this Choice Specs Dragapult, its main offense is Draco Meteor, it's a lot harder to close it out as the only attacker. But if you look at what 4 Pokemon were brought, once Rillaboom ended up low and Tauros got traded away, there really just wasn't much other damage potential. One difficult aspect of this is that the game went on long enough, we were focused on the 4 Pokemon that Carson did bring, but what's really important are the 2 Pokemon he didn't bring as well. Because Cary has to make very specific decisions in Team Preview to maintain his ability to beat Dondozo. A lot of teams have specific things they use to answer Dondozo, and if you don't have them with you and end up fighting against the Dondozo, you can be in trouble. And so it can make the matchup when your opponent instead just doesn't bring the Dondozo a little more awkward because you don't have what you'd otherwise like to use to maybe fight against a Dragonite.
Yeah, it's something that Cary can't, over-fixate on the Dondozo strategy if Carson does not bring either of those 2 Pokemon. However, you can't leave out the possibility that he could adjust in game 2. We just saw in our prior set with Wolf and Alberta, where Wolf winning with the Tailwind Yanmega strategy and then swapping it up, going for Trick Room with Porygon and Ursaluna in the game 2. So that's something that Carson, when you win game 1, you have that advantage to try to swap your game plan because even if it goes haywire, you still have a game 3.
Yeah, and you can hope to catch your opponent kind of overreacting to the game that just happened. Cary might look at what happened and go, okay, I need something that can fight against the Dragonite better. Maybe I need my King Gambit to hit it hard and not be as worried about Terra Blast and Extreme Speed, and then just end up in a poor spot against the Dondozo.
All right, so we'll see if Cary does make any adjustments here or if Carson is going to move on 2-0 into the top 8. It will be Paldean, Tauros, and Dragapult for Cary with the Indeedee Mail and Sneasler lead yet again. So this time around, at least Psychic Terrain will be on the field for this first turn. Remember, last time Cary led Rillaboom, which undersped Indeedee, which got the Grassy Terrain out. That means Cary is going to have to swap Rillaboom into an attack potentially if he wants to get rid of the Psychic Terrain.
Yeah, the Psychic Terrain maybe not as impactful here because there's no priority to worry about on the other sides. Would really just be about the Expanding Force. Now, of course, that Expanding Force is a pretty big threat. If Tauros just gets traded away really easily or a bunch of damage onto Dragapult, that would be a problem for Cary, and it's Focus Sash Indeedee, so it's not very easy to try to stop that either without switching into Rillaboom. And then from Carson's side, we see no adjustment yet, but one of the advantages of that 2-2-2 construction of Dondozo is that you can show the same really valid lead like the Indeedee and Sneasler and still be hiding whether or not you have Dondozo and Tatsugiri lurking in the back.
Yeah, so even if Cary sees this lead, as you're mentioning, he doesn't necessarily have to, or he still has to worry if it's Dragonite and Annihilate in the back or Dondozo, Tatsugiri. So Carson's going to try to conceal that information for as long as he can. Cary will terrestrialize Tauros right away here on turn 1 into the Terra Water, getting that additional same type attack bonus towards its water attacks. It did a lot of damage in game 1, so it's going to do even more now as a Terra Water Pokemon. Throat Chop brings Dragapult down to 50% of its HP. Remaining U-turn will be into the Indeedee, bringing it down very low, most likely bringing the Rillaboom into this slot. But whatever whatever Terra Water Tauros clicks into on the other end is in for a bad time, Len.
Yeah, most likely in for a KO, right? Since we're not a bulky Pokemon, he already has the Focus Sash broken and a lot of damage from that Choice Specs U-turn. Meanwhile, the Expanding Force will move first, but it's in Grassy Terrain, so just single target and not super effective anymore because of the water terastallization. So just a little bit of damage in a Tauros.
There is the Wave Crash and Cary targeting down the Indeedee male. For the rest of the game, Psychic Terrain is down. That strong damage, like I said, it's not about the priority, it's the amount of damage output a spread Expanding Force can do. Now Carson no longer has access to it. It's time. Do you reveal that you made an adjustment this game around? And yes, Carson breaking the Dondozo. Now you have the potential Tatsugiri swap shenanigans at any point.
Right. The Tatsugiri come in and make Sneasler a worthless target, or Dondozo could just protect while Sneasler goes after the Rillaboom or Tauros and means that it's the only important target. This is always kind of the moment of confusion when you're playing against Dondozo. There's no really safe move because it's only going to be one slot or the other slot that matters on this turn.
Now that Cary has activated his terastallization so early on in this match, that could potentially cost him later on. It costs his flexibility. Now that new information has been revealed that Dondozo Tatsugiri has been brought in Game 2 by Carson, activating that commander ability, boosting all of Dondozo's stats by 2 stages. So it's super fast, super bulky, and super strong. However, it's into a watering grass type on the other side of the field, so it's not like it's going to be hitting too hard there. Tauros will protect itself from a potential wave crash, and that is what Cary went for, so smart play to keep yourself safe. Rillaboom doesn't get targeted at all, but the Woodhammer went into the Tatsugiri slot, so no damage for Cary.
Yeah, Cary maybe expecting Sneasler to stay on the field while Dondozo protected itself and missed a pretty good opportunity to get a Woodhammer into Dondozo for a big chunk of damage. Wouldn't be surprised to see this Dondozo turn into a Steel type at some point. It's going to help to take a Draco Meteor or a Woodhammer, though it doesn't help with Wave Crash in the short term. But for now, Tauros leaving the field, wanting to make sure that it can get an Intimidate onto this Dozo in the future.
And he wants to save that Terra Water Pokemon for later on in the matchup, so Electabuzz will come into that position. Cary has revealed all 4 of his Pokemon. It is the same 4 Pokemon that he brought into Game 1. Terra Steel Dondozo trying to switch up its weakness here. Now Woodhammer going into that slot would do way less damage. Dondozo with the Wave Crash into the Electabuzz on the switch in does just about 70% towards that Electabuzz. Rillaboom will U-turn out though, so that means he can swap into either the Dragapult or the Tauros in the back.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see Tauros come back in here to get an Intimidate onto this Dondozo, start the Dondozo Hokey Pokey, but no, it's straight to Dragapult, straight to an offensive threat into this Dondozo, and it's a good time to do it. With Follow Me support next to the Dragapult, you may be able to get more than one attack off with Dragapult. The Grassy Terrain playing an important role here as well in weakening Earthquake. If the Psychic Terrain was still up, Earthquake might be a threat to just KO both of these Pokemon. But at only 50 base power because of the Grassy Terrain, not nearly as valuable.
And the other thing I thought, with Paldean Tauros, you have close combat into a now Steel type Dondozo on the other end, but you have Fire Blast to deal with it too. That's super effective, bringing Dondozo down very low. And now it's time for the Terra Steel Heavy Slam into Cary's Electabuzz. It is resisted, but it's enough for the knockout. Now Cary can swap the Tauros onto the field. You have 2 fast Pokemon there. This Steel typing actually being detrimental for Carson into the Fire Blast and the close combat.
Yeah, it used it to try to take a Woodhammer. Would have taken a really significant amount from Draco Meteor even if it had stayed as a water type. But one critical thing is that by using it early, there was no moment of indecision for Cary. Knew that Fire Blast was the right move. It was already a Steel type. Fire Blast, a little bit of an unusual coverage move to have from Dragapult, but really valuable here in order to get so much damage onto Dondozo. Now that damage is coming back out. But one key thing when you're looking at, I'm reaching the in stages of fighting the Dondozo and threatening a KO, how do you get the KO to also fight the Tatsugiri? You don't want to have it come out and still be able to lose the match because you can't fight the Tatsugiri and Sneasler.
Cary's going to swap Rillaboom into that Dragapult position here, and Heavy Slam goes into the Rillaboom. A critical hit brings Rillaboom down to 50%, but this close combat will follow up into Dondozo and not get the KO. The last couple turns of HP recovery from the Grassy Terrain have meant Dondozo hangs on the field in the red, and since it's so fast, try to go for another attack next turn.
Yeah, not KOing with the Dragapult there when the moment was available may end up meaning the Dondozo gets to attack again, but the Rillaboom switches in just in time to make sure the Grassy Terrain expires. Not sure if that's an intentional thing from Cary to turn off the healing for these Pokemon, but it is an aspect here. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Dragapult come back in alongside a Fake Out here, just so that way you can make sure to be threatening the Fire Blast on the subsequent turn and not be worried about one more Dondozo attack.
Right, especially because you can anticipate because of the Fake Out, you might want to protect, but instead actually does not protect here. Dondozo staying safe, or excuse me, only taking a little bit of damage because of the Fake Out being into a Steel type.
One key thing, though, is that now Cary has structured the KO into Dondozo in the way you want, where Dragapult can move first and threaten the Fire Blast KO and leave Rillaboom to still attack at the end of the turn and put a lot of damage into Tatsugiri. Now, it's not going to be a Grassy Terrain boosted Wood Hammer, but it's still a big threat. For now, Dondozo just protecting itself. It wants to get some Leftovers recovery. If that Fire Blast were to miss, or maybe it's going to be Shadow Ball instead to make sure it doesn't miss, and you're hoping that Leftovers will change some of these damage calculations.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to lock into the Shadow Ball now that the Dondozo is such low HP. You don't necessarily potentially need super effective damage, but this is 2 turns of Leftovers. Remember, Dondozo hung on at 11 HP. Now it's back up into the yellow at this point because of the Leftovers from the last couple turns.
Yeah, if this Dragapult ends up missing the KO with Shadow Ball, it's going to be a really unfortunate sequence of turns, but if it gets the KO, it's looking great for Cary. Let's see.
It is a Choice Specs Dragapult, so that is enough for Dondozo to go down. Carson's big Pokemon will be out for the rest of this game, and now Tatsugiri pops out back into that slot. Wood Hammer into this Tatsugiri. No Grassy Terrain means Tatsugiri hangs on at 6 HP. Now you'll have at least one chance potentially to ruin Cary's day.
Yeah, Tatsugiri hangs on, but one critical thing here, Sneasler gave up the Unburden boost. The Tatsugiri is not a Choice Scarf. Dragapult's going to get a chance to attack here. Rillaboom can also still pivot out and in to get priority Grassy Glides back. It's looking pretty comfortable for Cary, but has to deal with these last bits of damage.
Yeah, and your choice locked into Shadow Ball right now for Cary, which is consistent damage. You don't have to worry about a Draco Meteor miss or a Fire Blast miss or anything. Sure, it might not be super effective, but Sneasler's not bulky. There's no special defense boost anymore, and Tatsugiri is down to 6 HP.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder where this Shadow Ball will go. Into the Tatsugiri is a safe way to get a KO. Into Sneasler might be enough to get a 1-hit KO and really end this game, but if you were to miss that KO, things definitely open back up again.
Toro swapped into the Rillaboom position on Cary's end, getting an Intimidate. Shadow Ball from Dragapult into the Tatsugiri, taking it out, and now Carson down to just the Sneasler remaining in this matchup. We'll go for the Throat Chop into Dragapult for the KO, but again, Cary still has 2 Pokemon alive here in this turn, and you can go for a Dire Claw into Rillaboom, or you maybe close combat to the Tauros, but you're going to leave the other target still open to attack you.
Yeah, one of them's going to get to attack, and I think at -1, the Tauros will get to attack regardless. I don't think Sneasler can take the Tauros off the field, and that's pretty critical because Rillaboom doesn't do a great job of fighting Sneasler by itself. And so the Shadow Ball, just the safer way to make sure and get a KO. Meanwhile, Sneasler doesn't want to get faked out, so we'll protect through this turn.
Yeah, Fake Out, not going to do anything. We'll see, what happens to Sneasler next turn. Is already full HP, so it's not going to get any recovery. You know that for sure this Wave Crash is coming in your direction.
But where there's a Dire Claw, there's a way. I expect the next turn is a Dire Claw into Tauros, which is still a very easy way for Cary to lose this game. If Tauros falls asleep or goes from paralysis to fully paralysis, it's going to be tricky. Grassy Glide, you can see it's not doing that much damage, and there's still Grassy Glide, Grassy Terrain recovery coming in.
Is there a status condition? No! Tauros breaks through with the Terra Water Wave Crash into the Sneasler. Going to be enough for the KO, and Cary Giortana forces a Game 3 against Carson Confer.
So Carson made the adjustment, brought the Dondozo, and it didn't go nearly as well. The Dondozo didn't get that many attacks off, had to spend 2 turns attacking the Electabuzz, and really that was all the damage that it got to deal. And so then that left things more open for the Dragapult to sweep. And after what had looked like a pretty strong start, getting pretty good damage out on the first couple of turns.
Yeah, a nice adjustment from Cary here. Even if you brought the same 4 Pokemon and your opponent's the one that made the adjustments, at least he was able to, maintain the composure. That Terra Water was really important because it helped the damage output on the Tauros as well. But when you're looking into the Game 3, Len, it's not even as simple as, oh, well, I won Game 3, or I won Game 1 without Dondozo, I lost Game 2, therefore I go back to the Game 1 strategy, because it still was very dire for Carson when he choice locked into the final gambit, but you were at low HP, right? So it's not necessarily as simple as just go back to Game 1 strategy.
No, it definitely wasn't an easy win for Carson in Game 1. It could have gone the other way, and Cary could already be making adjustments thinking, oh, I've shown I can beat the Dondozo, he's going to go away from it. And you don't want to walk into a trap of things ready to really beat the Dragonite-focused mode. But there aren't really obvious easy counters to Dragonite. I know the Dragon Bolt is the best source of damage against it in the same way it is the best source of damage against the Dondozo. So it's not like there's an easy adjustment that just means, well, I'm going to beat the Dragonite no matter what if that's the mode again. So I'm probably just going to come down to the decisions during the game to see if Cary can find a way to beat the Dragonite mode with what he's been bringing already, or if Carson goes back to the Dondozo well, if he can find a way to get better value and better damage out of the Dondozo before it goes down. And
I do wonder, from Cary's perspective, you have not brought Volcarona or King Gambit at all in the first 2 games. Is it now time for you to go for the aha gotcha moment and switch up your strategy?
Possibly. The King Gambit might fight pretty well against the Dragonite. It doesn't have Low Kick, but it does have Stomping Tantrum, which could force a Terra, and then you can just Terra Blast. So it's not like it's going to clearly have an advantage. We've seen Sneasler every game, and that's got a great matchup into King Gambit, and can end up fighting reasonably against the Volcarona as well. Volcarona probably just won't get much time to set up in this game either. This is a construction of Dondozo that has a lot of instant offense. It's NDD going out and expanding force. It's Sneasler clicking big attacks, and then a pretty offensive Dondozo with 3 attacks ready to do giant heavy slams. And so if there's no time to get the Quiver Dances, and the Quiver Dances wouldn't help you against the Dondozo anyway because of Unaware, these may just be the right 4 Pokemon for Cary, and he's going to have to stick with it. So far, sticking with it.
Cary and Carson in Game 3. The winner of this match will move on to top 8 here at the Louisville Regional Championship. Dragapult, Rillaboom for Cary, and Dragonite Indeedee Male for Carson. We saw the same interaction in Game 1. Because Indeedee Male is faster, that means it activates Psychic Terrain first, and that means Grassy Terrain is on the field here for turn 1.
So we see our first adjustment in lead from Carson. No Sneasler next to this Indeedee. The Psychic Seed hasn't been eaten yet. Dragonite instantly on the field, and we see from his options here, no Dondozo this time. The same 4 Pokemon that he brought in Game 1. The Dragonite may be in a pretty strong spot here. Can threaten a Terra Blast into Rillaboom, and if it goes Flying type, probably not vulnerable to a Draco Meteor, but it would still do an enormous amount of damage. And maybe it's not a trade that you're really able to take because the Dragonite was so important to the total damage dealt for Carson in Game 1. If you lose it and Sneasler starts getting intimidated and Indeedee doesn't have Psychic Terrain, then where does that damage come from?
Dragonite is somewhat of a Terra hog on many team compositions, so it'd be hard to bring Dragonite and Dondozo in the same team because they both really do enjoy terrestrializing. And Carson will terrestrialize this Dragonite on turn 1 into the pure flying type. Have that Terra Blast go for flying damage as well. We'll see if this works out well in this strategy. The Fake Out goes into the Dragonite slot though, so Rillaboom stopping its attack. Draco Meteor on the Sneasler on the swap in, and Sneasler is down. 1-hit KO.
Sneasler has gotten good damage in every game, but not this one. Now Dragonite free to Terra Blast. Not sure what the Fake Out was aiming for there, but this is inner focus Dragonite, so not going to be flinched and does just get the Terra Blast into Rillaboom and get the 1-hit KO.
You see it on Cary's face, trading Sneasler and Rillaboom on turn 1, but the Fake Out doesn't work for the Dragonite because with inner focus you're not able to be intimidated or flinch. So now Indeedee Male can come back onto the field, have Psychic Terrain for the rest of the game, but Sneasler went down, so that was one of the big advantages from Psychic Terrain, right? You have the double speed to outspeed Dragapult. Dragapult probably wants to swap out here in this spot to reset that special attack as well.
Yeah, Dragapult wants to get out into the back and reset those -2. Also, at this point, Cary has a really good idea of what that 4th Pokemon is from Carson, right? Because if neither the Dondozo or the Tatsugiri was brought, it is the Annihilate in the back, and Annihilate has no way to hurt Dragapult. So if you can create a situation where you can, have Dragapult outspeed and KO the thing next to Annihilate, well, you just win from there. So Dragapult, a pretty important thing to preserve. But meanwhile, that leaves Electabuzz on an island. Wouldn't be surprised to see it protect itself, but then that leaves whatever switches into the Dragapult slot in the back. So Dragapult doesn't actually switch, just wants to actually get some damage off, gets a lot into NDD now.
That Draco Meteor landing into Ndidi brings it down under 50%, expanding force onto both Electabuzz and Dragonbolt. Dragonbolt's down very dangerously low. The Thunderbolt follow-up from Electabuzz means Ndidi is KO'd on this turn. So Ndidi only here for the one turn. Now it's up to Dragonite using the Terra Blast, flying into Dragapult, and Cary loses the Dragapult. That was the one condition, as you're saying, into Annihilate, but Annihilate cannot touch Dragapult.
So now Annihilate has a little bit more free reign. Carson hanging on here a lot from the speed from the NDD. I think in both games we've seen really valuable. If it had been slower than Electabuzz and just gone down to Thunderbolt without getting the expanding force there, this game would look a lot different. But instead, Annihilate comes in, is going to get a Defiant boost out of that. On the other hand, Dragonite looking pretty weak. Has the Electabuzz on the other side that won't mind the Terra Blast is now also fighting against this Tauros that could get a big wave crash into it.
There is the other aspect too of if you want to terrestrialize yet again on Tauros's end for the additional damage right from your wave crashes, and Terra Blast is resisted into Electabuzz as long as Electabuzz can follow me, redirect those away.
Absolutely. Now the other thing here, Tauros got the Mirror Herb boost from giving over the Defiant into Annihilate, so it is a nuke. It's going to have the chance to go for giant wave crashes. Electabuzz can move the first attack from Annihilate and open up that space as well. Tauros should be faster than the Dragonite, but for now, just protecting itself. Wants to see what this Annihilate blocks into.
Right, will keep itself safe. Electabuzz protecting as well. So this Choice Scarf Annihilate has to lock into one attack. Dragonite also protecting itself, so really no damage at all. He Choice Scarfs into Coaching to continue to boost the damage output from Dragonite.
What a great option for how to close out this game. You weren't going to do it with damage from Annihilate, just KOing the Electabuzz and leaving Tauros versus Dragonite wouldn't have been enough. But the coaching, it undoes the Intimidate, gives a defense boost that can help you try to take a wave crash from the Tauros on the other side. You're going to get another coaching before either of these Pokemon can attack. Now, Dragonite still has its work cut out for it. It's going to need to get a Stomping Tantrum into Electabuzz and a Terra Blast into Tauros before going down to some combination of damage from the two.
Well, the Dragonite will end up being a +2 attack because of the inner focus, negating the Intimidate, from the get-go there. So Electabuzz has to redirect the attack away. Dragonite is now just the flying type, so no longer resists Wave Crash on Cary's end, meaning that this Terra Water Wave Crash, it's going to come down to which terrestrialized Pokemon can KO the other one first.
Yeah, and with +2 defense before the Wave Crash comes out, I think Dragonite should be able to pretty comfortably take it. But the speed means it has to take 2.
Right, so we'll see Annihilate Choice Scarfed into Coaching, blows the whistle to boost the attack and defense on Dragonite's end by yet another stage. Now Tauros with the Wave Crash into this Dragonite slot. It's Terra Water boosted. It's going to be strong, but so not strong enough. That second Coaching boost proves crucial for it. But Electabuzz moves next with the Thunderbolt, knocking out Dragonite. And if the critical hit didn't need it because he's such low HP, and Annihilate is locked into a non-attacking move.
Dragonite just couldn't get its defenses high enough, fast enough against the Terra Water attack-boosted Tauros. And Dragonite just too slow in this matchup, slower than both the Electabuzz on the Tauros on the other side. They were both fast. NDD managed to be faster than both of them, but not the Dragonite, which meant it didn't get the damage off, and Annihilate just left by itself, and Cary taking down Carson, taking down the undefeated player, and moving into the top 8.
Losing game 1 and then winning game 2 and 3 to find yourself into top 8 against one of the best trainers in North America with his patented Dondozo. Remember the fantastic performance at NAIC 2023 Carson had with that Dondozo team. He is so comfortable piloting this type of crew, so absolutely impressive victory for Cary to win this one over Carson.
Yeah, just really well done to find the